This is Baruch Fleischman, your lift manager here at the Tikkun Elevator Colo. Notice that it says lift manager. They also call me Bobby. Okay, so look, it's a long time since we were back in the story of the stories of Rabbi Nachman, Sipurie, Maasios. To a great extent, I'm seeing that the story that we were learning has been really, what shall we say? It's been forgotten the line. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to we're reading a Pirush of Rav Schick, which he has the Sefer in Pirush, Nare Aparsimon. This is the rivers of persimmon, the beautiful flow of knowledge. Rav Schick wants to bring us this story, which has a lot of musar in it. How do we handle basically the ideas of all many different kinds of situations which the Yetzer Hara attacks us. It comes after us because, after all, Yaakov Hillel said, we live in the Zohamas Nachash. We're swimming in a sea of poison. Nonetheless, we keep our noses up above ground, and we're able to maintain ourselves. But the Rebbe wants to come and gives us some eitzes, exactly how we can do that. Now, I thought that the way to do this, since the last time I had the notation in my book, the last time, or the second to last time that we learned, was somewhere in June. So here we are in November. So it's been a long time. It's been 5 months since we went through this story. And I'm going to read this story in English and try to bring it back so we can get an idea, a little bit of where we're at. So the story goes like this. Is story number 2. And I'm reading this now from Rabbi Nachman's stories, which is translated by Aryeh Kaplan. So he translates this story, and I'm just going to read the story without his Pirush. Once there was a great emperor who did not have any children. There was also a king who did not have any children. So he writes in there that it's a lesser king. The king was less than the emperor. The emperor traveled all over the world, trying to find the remedy and a way to have children. The king also traveled around for the same reason. The two of them happened to come to the same inn. They did not know anything about each other, but the emperor recognized a certain royal bearing in the king. He inquired, and the other admitted that he was in fact a king. The king also recognized a certain royal manner in the emperor, and the latter also admitted his identity as well. The two of them told one another that they were traveling around in order to find a way to have children. And the two said they're looking to have children. They understand it. They understood each other. They made a pact between them that when they come home to their wives, one had a boy and the other a girl, so that they could marry. Then the two children would marry each other. The emperor returned home and fathered a daughter. The king returned home and fathered a son. So the greater one seems to be the daughter. The pact that they had made, however, was forgotten. The emperor sent his daughter away to study, and the king sent his son away to study. It turned out that the two of them went to the same tutor. They fell deeply in love, and they pledged that they would marry. The king's son took a ring and placed it on her hand, and they were thus married. Then the emperor sent for his daughter and brought her home. The king also sent for his son and brought him home. People proposed matches for the emperor's daughter, but she refused all suitors because of her pledge to the king's son. The king's son missed her very much, and the emperor's daughter was also very melancholy. She was depressed. The emperor brought his daughter to his estates and palaces to make her aware of her high status, but she was still melancholy. The king's son missed her so much that he became sick. People asked him why he was sick, but he refused to tell them. They asked his valet, perhaps you can find out the reason. The valet, who was with him when he went to study, replied that he knew the reason, since he was with the prince when he was away studying. He told him the entire story. The king then remembered that he had agreed to the match with the emperor a long time earlier. He wrote a message to the emperor telling him to prepare for the wedding because of the pact that they had made a long time ago. The emperor had no longer wanted the match, but he did not dare refuse because he had given his word. He replied that the king should send his son to him, and he would test him. If he was able to govern the kingdom, he would be able to marry his daughter. The king sent his son to the emperor. The emperor placed him in a room and gave him documents dealing with affairs of state to see if he could govern the country. The king's son had a very great yearning to see the emperor's daughter. He craved her, but he was not given a single opportunity to see her. Once he was walking near a wall of mirrors. He saw her reflection and fainted. She went over to him and revived him, telling him that she would not accept any match because of her promise to him. "What shall we do?" he asked. "Your father will not permit it." "We will go ahead anyway," she replied. They decided that they would go out to sea together. They hired a ship and sailed the sea. After they had traveled at sea for some time, they wanted to rest on shore. They came to a shore where there was a forest, and they disembarked. The emperor's daughter took off her ring and gave it to the king's son. She then laid down and went to sleep. Then, when the king's son saw her, that she was about to wake up, he placed the ring next to her. It was a very mysterious passage right there. They got up and headed toward the ship. When she remembered that they had forgotten the ring, she sent him to get the ring, but when he went back, he couldn't find the place. He went to another place, but could not find the ring. He walked around trying to find it until he got lost and could not get back to the ship. She went to try to find him, and she got lost too. The king's son walked further, but he was lost, and he was merely blundering around. Then he came upon a path, and it led him to an inhabited area. He did not have any occupation, he didn't have a job, so he became a servant. The emperor's daughter continued walking, but realized that she was getting lost. She made up her mind that she would stay next to the sea. She went to the shore, where there were fruit trees, and she remained there. During the day, she would go down to the sea, hoping to come across some travelers. She survived by eating the fruit. At night, she would climb a tree so that she would be safe from the wild animals. Meanwhile, there was an extraordinarily great merchant who had business dealings all over the world. He was very old and had one son. Now here he says this is talking about a force, or the force, from the other side. One day his son said to him, "You are very old. I am still young, and your servants do not pay any heed to me. When you die, I will not know what to do, and will not have anything. Therefore, let me have a ship with merchandise, and I will sail the sea. This will give me a chance to gain experience in business." His father gave him a ship with merchandise, and he went from land to land. He sold his merchandise and brought other goods, and was very successful in his dealings. While at sea, he saw the trees. Now he's riding the sea, and he saw the trees where the emperor's daughter was staying. He and his men assumed that it was an inhabited area, and they wanted to go there. However, when they came close, they realized that was nothing more than trees, so they decided to leave. Meanwhile, the young merchant looked into the sea. So now he wasn't looking at the land anymore, he was looking in the sea, which reflects. He saw the reflection of a tree, and on top of it, the appearance of a person. He thought that he might be seeing an illusion, so he told the other men who were with him. They looked and also saw what seemed to be the reflection of a person in the tree. They decided to get closer to it and send a man in a small boat to investigate. Meanwhile, they looked into the sea where they could see the reflection, so that they would be able to guide the scout directly to the right tree, so that he would not go the wrong way. When the scout got there, he saw a person sitting in the tree, and he reported back to them. The merchant's son went to investigate for himself, and he saw the emperor's daughter sitting there. He told her to come down. She replied that she would not go to the ship unless he promised not to touch her until they returned to his home, and he would marry her according to the law. He promised her, and she went with him to the ship. Soon he discovered that she could play musical instruments and speak many languages, and he was very happy to have found her. When they were beginning to come near his home, she told him that it would be proper for him to go home and tell his father, his relatives, and everyone else who knew him, so they would come out and welcome her. Since he was bringing home such an important woman, she would then tell him who she was. She had either made an agreement with him that he would not ask who she was until after the wedding, when he would find out, that is, that she had earlier made that. He agreed to go. She then said to him, "Since you are bringing home a wife like me, it would also be proper that you give all the sailors on this ship something to drink. They will then realize what kind of a woman their master is marrying." He also agreed to this. He had some very excellent wine on the ship, and he gave some to the sailors, and they drank, and they became drunk. The young merchant then went home and told his father and relatives about his bride. Meanwhile, the sailors became drunk and left the ship. They wandered off. You can imagine them wandering off the ship and carousing out there. They fell asleep and lay on the ground in a drunken stupor. While the merchant's entire family was getting ready to welcome her, the emperor's daughter untied the ship from the dock. She unfurled the sails and sailed the ship by herself. When the merchant's family then came and arrived at the dock, they did not find anything. The elder merchant was furious at his son. He was furious with his son. "Believe me," cried the son, "I brought home a ship filled with goods, but they saw nothing." "Ask the sailors," he said. The father went to ask them, but they were lying there drunk. When they woke up, he asked them, but they had no idea what had happened to them. They only knew that they had brought a fully laden ship, but now they were completely ignorant of its whereabouts. Now the elder merchant was furious with his son, and he banished him from the house. He told him that he never wanted to see him again. The son left and became a vagrant wanderer. Meanwhile, the emperor's daughter was sailing the sea. At the same time, there was a king. Now let's say at this time, she's out on the boat. There was a king who had built his palace near the sea. He felt that this was the best place to build a palace because of the sea breezes and the ships that passed by. When the emperor's daughter sailed the sea, she approached the king's palace. She wanted to see it. The king looked and saw what appeared to be a ship with no sailors or passengers. He thought that they were seeing an illusion, so he told his men to look, but they also saw the same thing. As the emperor's daughter came closer to the palace, she made up her mind. Let me see what I said. I missed it. Yeah, she made up her mind that she had no need for the palace, but when she tried to pull away, the king sent his men and made her come back. They brought her to his palace. So I think Rabbi Schick points out that this is a little bit like wanting to go to something that's inappropriate, and you start to get there, but then you decide, hey, well, I don't want to do this. This king was not married. He could never make up his mind on anyone. Whenever he wanted a woman, she did not want him, and vice versa. When the emperor's daughter arrived, she demanded that he swear not to touch her until they were legally married. Sounds familiar. He made an oath to her. She then said it would not be proper for him to open her ship or even touch it, for him to open her ship or even touch it. Rather, it must remain untouched on the sea until the wedding. Then everyone would be able to see the vast amount of goods that she had brought with her. Then people would not say that the king had taken a woman from the street. The king also promised her this. The king wrote to all the nations inviting them to his wedding. He also built palaces for her. The emperor's daughter demanded that she be given 11 noble women to accompany her. So the king issued an order and sent her 11 daughters of the greatest nobles, building a special palace for each one. The emperor's daughter also had her own special place, where they all came together. The women played musical instruments, and they also played games with her. One day she told the other woman that she would like to go down to the sea with them. They went with her, and they played games there. She then offered to serve them some of the very excellent wine that she had. She gave them from the wine. The women became so drunk that they fell asleep and lay there. She then untied the ship, spread the sails, and fled with the ship. When the king and his men discovered that the ship was missing, they became very anxious. The king did not know that the emperor's daughter had fled with the ship. He assumed she was in the chamber. The king said, "Be careful not to tell her too suddenly. She will be very upset because this precious ship is gone. Also, she might think that I gave her the ship to someone else. Therefore, send one of her noble women to tell her in a subtle way, so she would be upset." So the men went to one chamber and did not find anyone there. Then they went to the second chamber, and the same was true. They went to all 7 chambers and did not find anyone. Finally, they agreed to send an elderly noblewoman at night to tell her. They all went to the chamber of the emperor's daughter and did not find anyone there. They were very alarmed. Now, meanwhile, the fathers of these noble women were accustomed to getting letters from their daughters. They usually sent letters back and forth, but now they saw that they were sending letters to their daughters and they weren't getting any replies. Nobles decided to go and investigate, but when they arrived, their daughters were not to be found. The nobles were furious, and they wanted to banish the king and place him under a death sentence. As ministers of state, they had the power to do this, but then they thought it over. What did the king do to deserve to be banished? It was really not his fault. Instead, they decided to impeach him and have him exiled. So they impeached the king and they exiled him. The king thus went on his way. Meanwhile, the emperor's daughter sailed away on her ship. She had these 11 noble women with her. When the noble women woke up, they continued playing their games and they did not know that the ship had left port. They didn't pay any attention. Finally, they said to her, "Let's go home." No, she replied, "Let's stay here a while longer." So then a big storm came. "Let's go home," they insisted. The emperor's daughter informed them that the ship had already left port. "Why did you do this?" they demanded. She answered that she was afraid that the ship would break up in the storm. Her only choice was to untie it and spread sail. That's a little bit of a lie, right? The emperor's daughter and the 11 noblewomen sailed the sea and played their musical instruments. Once they came across a palace, and the lady said, "Let's go there. Let's see if we can come close." You know, like we have American Airlines, we have all these different things. It could take us to Morocco, it could take us to Australia. We could go to all kinds of fancy places. We could see what we want to see and shop and have a great time. The emperor's daughter, however, did not want to. She said that she still regretted that she had even come close to the palace of the king who tried to marry her. Then they sighted an island, and they drew near to it. There were 12 pirates on the island, and they wanted to kill the women. So they came to the island, apparently, and the pirates were there. So suddenly, they want to kill these women. "So, who is the greatest amongst you?" asked the emperor's daughter. When they pointed him out, who was their leader, she asked him, "What is your occupation?" He told her that they were pirates. "We are also pirates," she replied. "You rob with your strength, but we rob with cleverness. We know languages and music. What will you gain if you kill us? Better marry us. Then in addition to our wealth, you will also have wives." The emperor's daughter showed the pirates everything that was on the ship. She showed the pirates everything that was on the ship. Taken in by her words, the pirates also showed the women all their wealth, taking them to all of their hiding places. They also agreed that they would not all get married at the same time, but one after another. The pirates would not have a mass wedding, but would get married one after the other. Also, each one would pick out the lady most suitable for him, with the leaders getting first choice. She then offered them some of the fantastically good wine. Why not? You'd celebrate. That she had on the ship. She told them that she had never used this wine since she had put it aside until the time came for that God would arrange for her to meet her destined husband. She served the wine in 12 goblets and said that each one should drink to all of the 12 women. They drank each one to each individual woman, became so drunk that they fell asleep. "Come," she said to her companions, "each one of you slit the throat of her destined husband." The women slaughtered all the pirates. They then found their treasures, which were greater than that of any king. They agreed that they would not take any copper or silver, just gold and precious stones. They threw everything that was not so valuable off the ship and loaded it down with the more valuable gold and precious stones that they found there. The women also agreed that they would not dress like women anymore. That's strange. So they sewed themselves men's clothing in the German style. They then sailed on in their ship. Meanwhile, there was an elderly king who had an only son. He married his son off and gave him his kingdom. The king's son said that he would take a journey by sea with his wife so as to accustom her to the sea air. Then, if heaven forbid they were ever forced to flee by sea, she would be prepared. He took his wife and royal ministers and sailed off on the ship. They were very happy and they played games. Then they all decided to take off their clothes. The king and the royal ministers on the ship were so elated they decided to undress, leaving on only their shirts. They had a little bit on. Then they had a contest to see who could climb the mast. The king's son tried to climb first. Meanwhile, the emperor's daughter approached in her ship, and she saw the other ship with the king's son and the ministers. At first, she was afraid to come close, but when the women saw that the men also were playing games, they realized that they were not pirates, so they came closer. They're out there. You see them on the ship. The sails are out there. Got a telescope. Looking here. The emperor's daughter said to her companions, "I can knock that bald one into the sea." Now, who's the bald one? What's the meaning of the word bald? Let's go back in her story a little bit. This was the king's son who was climbing the mast. The king's son had lost all his hair and was completely bald. How is that possible, they asked. We are still quite far from them. She told them that she had a burning glass, some kind of reflection mirror, and would use it to knock him down. She explained she would knock him down until he had climbed to the very top of the mast. As long as he was climbing the mast, he would fall down to the ship. But when he was on the top, he would fall into the sea. There's some significance to this, but that's in the story that we told already. We have to go forward. So she waited until he reached the very top of the mast, and then she aimed her burning glass at his head. His brain was burned, and he fell into the sea. When the men on the king's ship saw him fall, there was great panic. How could they ever return home? The old king would die of grief. So now we are at our place in the story. So the story says, according to Rav Schick, and they read the Hebrew and translate it, became Shirah, that is, they saw, that is, the men in the boat. Shanafal na'aser sham rash gadol, there's a tremendous commotion there. Ki ech yuchlu lachzor lechazor lebeisam, how could they ever go back to their houses? Ki hamelech yamoz machmer sar, they will kill the king because of the pain, that is, the old king, because of the pain. What happened is their head fell. Also what he says over here. What's head? What head? All that he wanted was a consumption of something that would make him big. He wanted to go up to the top of the mast. Because after the Sitra Achra are also 10 spheros. And they gathered together different people. So he leads them with a complete lie, a deception. When he fell into the sea, then they didn't know what to do. Because the head of the Sitra Achra has 10 spheres also. The same image of everything that is in Kedusha is on the other side. So the heads of the other side, in the end they become nullified. And what a tremendous amount of embarrassment there are to people who have been living a lie. They've been following a lie, follow politics a little bit, follow religions, follow people who stand out in religions. A lot of them are shakranim, are liars. They're basically the deceivers. They're in positions of power. Ramoyim, tzvuyim, hypocrites, people who change. So they said, let's go near the boat. Because they looked out. Their head, the leader of the Sitra Achra has fallen down. All the lies that they had listened to are completely knocked down. Ula yesham is a doctor, and they looked out and they saw this other boat, and they said, maybe there's a doctor there. We could fix him up. So he should yuchul litain lachem eitza, who could give him a little bit of advice. Ki b'kol zois yesh etzel kol echen nekuda tova. So he says, what's the advice? What could he give him? Because every single person, now how badly they behave, has something good inside of them. Shebepnimios, who wrote to the Hizkarav el Tzadik, Shirafel so. Now let's see if you looked at Rabbi Memram's book again. I just love that book. And he talks about coming close to Hashem Yisbarach and teaching us a way to be able to do that. Even a person who's very, very low, say myself, I feel low. So let's say me who's trying, but I'm making mistakes. Even that person, the life force that is within him, is coming from his neshama, which is the aura of God, of the Ein Sof Baruch Hu. That's inside of every single living thing. That's Jews and Goyim. Everybody wants that because it's everlasting. So we're going to try to connect ourselves to it. Because Karval the Sefina now, so he comes, they all came, not to this boat. That's the Sefina that belongs to the Bas Keser. And they say to them, that is the boat, the people in the boat of the king. Hashrosh im Bas Keser now, another one, the Saros, he wants to talk to the people with the ladies over there. Shelo Yisyaro Klal, they shouldn't be afraid. Don't be afraid, we're coming near you. Ki lo ya'asa lechem klal, I'm not going to do anything to you. So what is this? He says this is a begam in the faith that we have in our wise men, the tzaddikim. Because they need salvation. Because the head of the lie that they were living is now in the ocean. So what are they going to do? They're going to get a doctor. But with this they say, Shelo Yisyaro Klal. But even so, they say to the people supposed to help them, they shouldn't be afraid of us. We're not going to do anything bad to you. Why are they coming near the boat? Because they need something to save them. What are they saying? We're not going to do anything bad to you. This is that when you're coming to the tzaddik, and when say to the tzaddik, I need help, but don't be afraid of me. I'm not going to hurt you. Does the tzaddik know who you are? Does the tzaddik look at the tzidkus that's within inside of you? Shalom Osam, so he'd ask them, Ulai yesh benechem doctor? Maybe you got a doctor over here? Sheyiten lona eitzu, could give us a little piece of advice? So he said, Ki tzaddik emes. So the true tzaddik is the person that really knows how to teach us to become healed. Sheyachol Rafo says kulam that he's able to heal all of them. The Sipurie lechem kol Maasios. So they told them all the story. V'shebein Melech nafal l'sochayam, and they say that there was this king. He went up the top of the mast. He fell into the ocean. The Bas Keser, who looks like a man, now said to them, they should take him out of the water. So they went, they found him, and they brought him out. So they took his pulse in their hands. That is that's the people from the boat, from the lost the daughter. This is an interesting idea that Rabbi Memran has said to me many times, and I know I'm quoting Rabbi Memran when reading the Rabbeinu HaKodesh, but I'm just interpreting the way that I understand Rabbeinu HaKodesh. That in everything is everything else. That in everything is 10 spheros, let's say 10 spheros, and inside of those 10 spheros are 10 spheros. So that if you know the inside of the sphera, then you know all the outside. So if you know the inside of one, you know all the rest of them. So to think about that, we'll talk about it more sometime. And this is what the Rabbeinu HaKodesh said, because in one place, if you take the hand, you can touch the heart. If you touch the heart, then you can understand the brain, because the brain is the intention. Intention goes into the heart with the feeling, it comes out in the hands. Shazer Merames al tzedakah kamoshakasa. Rav Schick writes that this is an inference to tzedakah. Lo ta'amet says levavacha, because if you're going to give something to somebody else, a little shtickle musari throws in here. That if you're going to fortify your heart, make your heart hard. Lo tach tikbots es yadecha me'achicha. Don't close your hand up from your brother ha'avion, who is really seriously poor. Because from the hand you can understand what's in the heart. The lev is an extension of a person's mind. So therefore, you could really recognize a person. Watch him, how he gives tzedakah, and you'll be able to understand who the person is. That's very interesting. You find someone who's stingy. They're stingy people. There's times where people look like they're stingy, maybe they're not. They tore open his brain. That he saw that according to what she said, that is, it's her, but they think it's a doctor, a he, that his brain was burnt. Because this is the general way. The person whose mind is really messed up. He doesn't give tzedakah. And they trembled tremendously. And so they said, listen, please, come with us to our place. You can become the doctor to the king. You're going to be tremendously important, a very tremendously high aristocratic level, but she didn't want to. First of all, she's a woman, as she said about Elazar. And secondly, they think she's a man, but she's not. And then the doctor, she said, I'm not a doctor. But I know a few things like this, that's it. As atzman, they always limit themselves, they all minimize themselves, their physicality or their position in life. And they're not searching for any kavod or yeshiv that they had in the world. So even, so let's say, what is this? They have something. So they say, well, that really don't have. Why did they do this? Because they don't want to see, like I say, if you looked at me and I had on this hand a really big, expensive watch. This one, not. Had a real big, something, big, super duper Rolex. Well, let's say somebody gave you one. So if you wear it, then all of a sudden you're attracting tremendous power towards yourself. You're saying lots of things about you. That I am the wearer of this Rolex. But let's say you gave the Rolex to a tzaddik, he would put it in the drawer. Why would he do that? He would do that because it changes people's perception of who you are. So I'm not trying to say that I'm a tzaddik, but this is following the advice of the tzaddik. I'm thinking that I wear Tikkun elevator Kollel workmen's shirts. V'heim einam rotzen the lechas im af echad. He doesn't want to go even with anybody. So this is a real mile of the greatest of the tzaddikim. Sheinim rotzen b'shum pana the lechas el acherim. They don't want to go with other people. They don't want to show off. Ela yoshvim b'dal adam shalachem. They want to stay confined to their own space. Ashreichem v'ashrei chelkom. That's the way I understand that. This is going to be the end of shir today. So the way that I understand this is your own space is just being you. As you realize that you're mostly different earth elements, and there's not much to you except there's a breath of life in you, which comes from the Ein Sof Baruch. So as a person comes to realize that the way we are in the world that we live in, you might realize it right now, but then 10 minutes later you got to show off in some way. So. All right, anyway, thanks.